All right, everybody, what is this about? This is about conversation, right? There's an invite you can type in down in the description. There's a different one. At the point at which you cannot use them, then just tell me and I'll create a new one. I expect that'll be a while. All right, so now the point is conversation, but we don't have conversation. Now, I'd rather have a mediocre conversation than go through reviewing a video formula and have that be really great, my response. Of course, it's going to be better than anybody else's response, but I'd rather have a tiny little new experience um, actually interacting with a real human being than go over responses to videos simply because I've already thought I'm constantly reliving previous thoughts of mine. I don't need a mirror of an audience to know how I'm going to feel about some clip. I'm just relaying it to you. And, sure, that's great for you, but for me, it doesn't do that much. However, it's promotion of the fact that we should have this conversation. And there's a Discord channel, and of course, keep in mind that Discord is for free. Lots of great features. Consider yourself in the public square when you speak there. Let's just put it that way. You know, it's for free, so it's data collection. Nothing wrong with that, right? Because it's all public. What we do there is all public. If you go into the channel, you'll find a broadcasting voice and a broadcasting, well, you'll find a voice channel called broadcasting and a text channel called broadcasting.text. There's other channels as well where you're not supposed to get broadcast. Of course, anybody could do anything they wanted. But the idea is if we go into broadcasting, then anybody can broadcast it, and you might be broadcast. It's the most public of the public part of the square, but the whole square is public, as I just said. You should just assume it's all public. But broadcasting is specifically for going public. If you go in there while the stream is going, then you will show up in this list up here where just I am a theory. That's my name in Discord because it comes from my gaming handle. So I'm a theory, which most of you will understand that's entirely appropriate handle, and not really that different from Piro 314. Okay, so we're gonna watch this Joe Rogan interviewing the CEO of Whole Foods, who is Jack McKay. And Jack McKay, he's the CEO or was the CEO of Whole Foods. Um, but he didn't start it, did he? That's what I'm looking. A little bit of history. There you go. He's kind of an asshole. We're about to see that. No, he did co-found Whole Foods. Okay. He was on Joe Rogan. Let's just watch it. Rogan experience. Oh fuck, that's no good. No good. Nope. Got to put it on the other speakers. How about this?
Capitalism and
There we go.
Marxism and socialism. This right now we're in a wave of this, right? It's become more popular now. I would say over the last, particularly during the Trump administrations, the concept of socialism at least has become more publicly discussed than any time that I can remember in my life. Why do you think that is?
I think it's because the generation that's coming up is, I mean, you have to understand the academic community is I always say the intellectuals have always been the enemy of business, enemy of.
That's an interesting admission.
Certainly the enemy of capitalism.
But why?
Interesting. Some capitalists think the intellectuals are on their side.
Is that?
I think because in in a market society, which has been rare in history. We haven't mostly had market societies, but they're
Oh,
not very
really?
important in a market society.
Intellectuals aren't important in a market society. That's pretty amazing to say in the information age. I mean, how many MBAs and uh, engineers and people that require academic education do you think Whole Foods employs, or Amazon, or Google? Okay.
Uh,
The
think
intellectuals aren't very important,
generally not as important.
but
No,
aren't they the ones that inspire the minds of the people that create and maybe innovate in the industry?
they don't have the same social status that the entrepreneurs have. An
Oh,
Elon Musk or
Social status. Now that's interesting because I think that's different. Now, I live in a small town. I know some small businessmen, and remember, small businessmen as a class, of course, there's people that are just barely making it, but we're really talking about people with successful local businesses, that are making millions of dollars, and they're making like doctor money, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And, they seem to value, their condos at the ski resort and stuff like this, and not necessarily value academics. But there's some rich people that very much value academics, and at their parties there will be a bunch of academics, and then there's the academics themselves who feel like they're putting themselves or attempting to put themselves in history if they can make scientific discoveries, whether they're Einstein famous or not. They will go down and be remembered and have left a permanent mark. And they feel like the businessmen making more money is kind of shallow. So it's funny to assume, oh, businessmen have more status. Yeah, in the kinds of crowds that businessmen hang in, the people that respect their status. Whereas in scientific communities, people of intellectual accomplishment have the highest status.
Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. These
so you
guys.
think it's an ego issue, the social status issue?
Think about it this way: if you're going to school, okay, and the people that end up teaching in the universities were always the smartest kids in the school generally, and they did well in school. I mean, smart in terms of doing well in school. And they go on to college, and then they go and get a PhD, and then they that's all they've known is school. That's been their universe, right?
Right.
And they excelled at it, and they were smarter than the other kids in school. And now these other kids, they go to college and they get a degree in business, and they're in a fraternity, and they make a lot of
Oh.
friends and relationships, and they make more money than the intellectuals do. And that seems like that's completely unfair.
But the intellectuals, like a guy that, or a woman or whomever, gets a PhD and studies astronomy, they obviously don't care that much about money because they could take that degree, they could get a million degrees that would make money. They are spending the money they don't make on being able to feel really good. Like most corporations are like high schools where you can lose your income if you fuck up. High schools where the students decide how things work. Just crazy politics and for like selling widgets and most scientists are like, well, I'd rather work on things that have a meaning in their own right, not just because they made someone that invested in a widget company, making hangers or paper clips, billions of dollars. It's like, okay, you're making a lot of money by owning a multi-city uh, cleaning service, but that's not that exciting to hear or talk about. And that's why you talk about your condo or whatever. So the idea that there's this sort of status to me is funny because I don't really believe there's true status like one thing or another thing. It's all based on, individuals and what they like and who the community is going to be made of. But, if I did have a feeling like that, it'd certainly be towards the academics. Just making the money is not enough.
It's an unjust world that this less smart people are making more money than the smart people do, and they have more status in the society.
Kay says entertainers make millions. Doctor, not even close. Not true. A staff doctor or someone like that is making hundreds of thousands. But if you start your own practice, sky's the limit. You can make a lot of. You can definitely make millions.
society. And I think that's underlying it is a resentment or an envy of a society that doesn't judge.
Wow, I think the envy is the businessman is envying the fact that the academic has more factual authority about how reality actually is, even though they don't have status.
Them to be as important as they judge themselves.
That's interesting, but I think it's a very flawed perspective. And first of all, the term smart is a weird term.
I said smart in terms of school. I didn't say in terms of street smarts.
Yeah.
I definitely believe there's different categories of smart and emotional intelligence counts, and I definitely am not saying that academics might not be unsmart in certain ways, like that are important to living. Just as businessmen can be smart for business and then stupid. I mean, fucking Ben Carson is an accomplished brain surgeon and thinks that the pyramids were grain storage units. And both of those are academic things. One, evidently, he's up to speed on. The other one, kind of stupid about. So, I think in general, this kind of envy analysis can go both ways. And somebody that tries to say, I'm a businessman and the academics are all envious of me, sounds like a narcissist making an excuse.
Or ability to do things, to connect with people. There's emotional intelligence. I'm merely saying they're good at taking tests, writing papers, abstracting thoughts, essentially.
Yeah, but this is what I'm saying. That just the term smart, it's almost like the problem is it's like a blanket term, right? It's like drugs. Like it applies to a bunch of different things that don't necessarily seem to be related. But the people that are interested in that pursue that. The fact that they can't understand that there's an like Elon Musk is a great example. If you don't think Elon Musk is intelligent, you're either you're
not very intelligent yourself.
Yeah.
Well, he's intelligent, but then he says some, things that, traditionally, might undermine other things he's doing, but he's compensated so far. But I agree. I think he's very intelligent. But, intelligence isn't a universal, like, being intelligent doesn't mean you're going to be intelligent about each and every challenge and question you face.
I don't think Elon Musk is intelligent.
You're delusional, or you're a liar, or you're in denial.
Right.
It's one of those things. There's something wrong with the way you think. He's clearly intelligent, but there's people that call him a fool, and that like the guy's running like 4 different businesses simultaneously. They're all successful, and he's innovating with when it comes to space travel in a way that you would assume that someone have to dedicate most of their life just singularly to that task to be able to figure out past NASA how to shoot a rocket up into space and have it land,
right,
and then reuse it. No one's been able to do that besides him, or up until he did it. And I think Jeff Bezos' company is doing the same thing too now.
Blue Origin.
Yeah.
They're obviously 2 of the great entrepreneurs of this particular era.
But I don't think Jeff Bezos is actually engineering these things.
But
yeah, exactly. It's like, I think maybe some of these educated people might be involved with making the rockets.
if you think about it, the intellectual.
Or for that matter, Jeff Bezos is highly educated. He's like a Yale smarty pants, went into fintech, financial technology, came up with the idea for Amazon, which was a whole plan to get data to leverage into what he's done now, which all worked. And, there was a lot of academic background to that. I don't know this guy's academic background. I'm guessing not so hot.
Have always disliked business. They've always discriminated against the merchant classes, the Jews in the West.
Oh my God, academics have discriminated against the merchant class and the Jews. But aren't all the academics mostly Jews? I thought, oh my God, this guy. Everybody's out of the closet now that we've had Trump. Whole Foods. This is, if you thought he was some Ben and Jerry hippie communist, nope, he's a libertarian asshole with food and yoga puritanism in him, I guess.
Chinese in the East. There's really been no historical period where intellectuals praised business. Maybe a little bit around the time of Adam Smith, up until probably Ricardo and Malthus wrote in the early 19th
And he says it's because of resentment.
century. For the most part, business people have been seen, they're disruptive. They change things. They upset the status quo. They innovate. Well, a lot of people don't like innovations. It's threatening. It changes social status. It changes.
I mean, that's ridiculous. All of the innovations, the death of God, the incompleteness theorem, the dissolving of the classically coherent universe where if you tell me where everything is, I'll tell you the future. This all fell apart because of purely academic and intellectual factors. Logic itself. Oh, this guy is an even more annoying than his store is.
Changes wealth relationships. That it's almost like capitalism is like a genie that got out of the bottle, and they're trying very hard to stuff the genie back in the bottle as much as they can. And I think if you think about it that way, you'll understand we're never going to win the intellectuals over. I mean, I speak in universities all the time, and the students.
You might as well say that they're never going to be able to prove that the way the asshole businessmen do things is actually better for people. We're never going to satisfy the criteria of people that want facts and then combine them with logic. This is why these assholes like Trump. I don't know if he's a Trump supporter, but this is how it happens.
Students, I'm an entrepreneur. I self-identify that way. Students love when I talk about.
Well, you're not an entrepreneur because you're a big businessman. Entrepreneur days were way back.
Conscious capitalism. As I say, you can do good and you can do well. There's no contradiction here. You're the good guys here. You're not the bad guys.
Do you debate people about this?
I do. I've debated a number of socialists.
And what is their primary argument?
Their primary argument is that business is greedy and selfish, and it's about motivations. That business people have the wrong motivations. In a lot of ways, conscious capitalism is an answer to that. It's a complete answer to that, because in the book and in Conscious Leadership as well, we're basically arguing that business isn't primarily about maximizing profits. Business is primarily about creating value for other people. And through creating value for other people, you do make a profit. But it's the value creation that comes first. The profits come second in exchange, right? And it's almost, if you are creating value, then you are profitable. And then you can reinvest those profits, and you have this upward spiral. So that. Business has this potential for higher purpose. It's not primarily about greed. Greed is found in human nature, Joe. It's not just found in business people. There are plenty of greedy governmental officials.
Yeah. But, that I don't know about that, because it depends on how you define greed. Very few animals will kill, for example, to hoard a resource. They will preemptively kill for territorial reasons. And but rarely will they hoard and spend time getting more of a resource than they can possibly use just to keep it from other people for status reasons, which is what greed really is.
Plenty of greedy politicians, greedy lawyers. Greed is endemic to human nature. Business people either have no more or no less than it. It's just part of who we are.
Has anyone ever laid it out in a way that's very compelling? Like when you have these debates with socialists and has anyone ever laid it out in a way where they have a point where you see their point?
The best way to do a debate is completely.
As annoying as Joe Rogan can be, he does have a refreshing honesty with the way he goes about stuff.
Understand the other side's position.
Yeah.
I understand it as good or better than they understand it. And so I've read widely in social.
So I understand just how resembled they are.
Literature. I think I do understand it. it's a type of utopianism. It's an attempt to change human nature.
Well, human nature, so called, has been changing an awful lot over history. And if we see how things could be better, then we can achieve that. And maybe there's some people that don't want to change their nature. And how about this? How about they don't have to? But they shouldn't get in the way of everybody else that is changing it.
If we would all love each other, and if we'd all share equally, then the world would be a better place. And hey, guess what? It probably
See, he admits it would be a better place if we did that. Oh, but we can't. Because greed is natural and therefore we should embrace it, just like smallpox.
would be if we were naturally that way, but we're not naturally that way.
We're naturally subject to a lot of natural disaster as well. But we just build houses and things. God, this guy's an asshole. But you see, that's the funny thing. He's praising the entrepreneurs where I think there's some truth to that. It's like even stupid things like our cell phones or whatever. You can always make an argument about how, well, people want it and it's helping their life. But often if it's like earthquake-proof buildings, this is like it's saving lives and whatnot. But all he did was make a health food store chain less friendly than your local co-op, more expensive, and be an asshole. It's not that great. It's not like he's one of these innovators.
We look first generally for ourselves and our own families, and then our growing circle of relationships that we develop. It's not natural to.
Okay, I'm going to answer this question. King Kush said, lizards will steal from each other's mouths with a plate full of food in front of them. Is it greed or biological imperative? Look, selfishness is not the same as greed. Wanting food, and maybe you're not that hungry, but you're not stuffed full, that's different than greed. Greed is piling up $1 billion when it would take you 2,000 years to spend it. And yet it just makes you feel good. Like, I feel really good if, I'm 50. Let's say I'm really lucky. I live another 50 years. It'd be great to have, I don't know, what would be super rich from that, okay? $500,000 a year. So it's $1 million every 2 years, and I'm going to live another 40 years. So that's, so every 2 years is $1 million. So every 20 years is 10 million. So 40 years is 20 million. So let's say I had $30 million. That's potentially greedy. It's certainly selfish, but I'm like, oh, I'd never have to work again. I have the whole time. Okay, so that would maybe be greedy because you know what? I could live fine on 100,000. You pretty much can have your health care and all the other things. So, okay, so maybe I only need a couple million. But 2,000 years worth of it? You're just hoarding, and ultimately a lot of greed is just feeling better than other people because you have stuff you don't even need while they don't have stuff they do need. So just being selfish like a lizard or even a baby, the greed is more like the baby keeps stealing everybody else's candy even though it's full and can't possibly eat more candy, and it just hides them away and keeps them from other people. Greed is not just your regular caring about yourself too much, in my book.
It's natural to want your own children to have advantages. That's just human nature, to want your children to flourish because you raise them, you love them. And somehow or another to say that's unfair is cutting against human nature. People are always going to look for advantages or privileges, so to speak, for their children.
Yeah, people don't like when people have advantages and have victories because then someone has to lose.
People? Aren't you two people?
When someone loses, they equate that someone losing with a bad feeling, with that person being victimized. Like there's some.
All right, so here's a big idea we talk about in conscious leadership. We have a chapter called Find Win-Win-Win Solutions. The metaphors that we use to think about society tend to be very...
It sounds like regular corporate bullshit.
Binary, good versus evil, light versus darkness, win versus lose. And so they tend to think of business as a win-lose game. Somebody wins and somebody else is losing. But the beauty of capitalism is it's a win-win-win game.
Except for the academics.
It's an infinite game.
'Cause
It's
they're
a game
lose
because the
us.
customers are winning or they wouldn't trade. The employees are winning. How are the customers winning? They're getting products and services and there's competition.
He was almost going to say at a good price. Oh, wait, that's right. I'm the CEO of Whole Foods.
To make those services and products better. The employees are winning because they have.
I got to say, I do like going to Whole Foods with all the food counter. It's a well-made store, but I just dislike this guy.
Jobs and opportunities to grow, benefits are paid, and they do that voluntarily. They're not forced to work for any particular company. They do it because they think it's in their best interest. Win for the employees. The suppliers who are trading with the business, they're winning as well, or they wouldn't make the exchanges. Investors are winning, or they wouldn't make the investments. And the larger society is winning because business.
And the planet is winning, or else it wouldn't be spinning. And the sun is winning, or else it wouldn't be shining. And the rainfall is winning, or else it wouldn't be flowing into the ocean. What a bunch of crap.
This is the engine that creates all the money that goes into nonprofits and governments. Without business, there is.
Whole Foods is overpriced, but it is. It's like a Toys R Us of health foods. And they have a lot of foods you can just buy and eat right there, like a restaurant that you just pick whatever you want and they pay by the Anyway, okay. Don't want to make this into a Whole Foods advertisement when I hate this guy.
There is no government and there is no nonprofit sector because those are ultimately supplied through what business creates. So business is a win-win-win game. All of these stakeholders are winning, and that's why capitalism lifts society up. Socialism is an attempt to reverse that back to a win-lose game. And that's.
You can't possibly lose if you just, ignore academic results, ignore research, ignore facts. Then it's win-win-win. God, this guy.
That's why it always fails. And that's why capitalism
How is it
always
an
wins.
attempt to bring it back to a win-lose game? In what way?
If capitalism always wins and socialism always fails, what's this guy whining about? They just were talking about socialism making gains in people's mind share during Trump. But it's always going to lose. See, it's just like rah, 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 think positive. Academic world and facts is going to lose, you guys.
The ones that are winning, so to speak, the business people are clamped down, so they're not allowed to win. It's like, we're going to take your success and we're going to redistribute it. So that, as again, you said earlier on, incentives matter. But we're going to take away the incentives for business to really flourish
I almost
and
don't want
succeed.
to pause it again. I'm just
They should
sick
do
of
it from
listening, but I want to
altruistic
finish
reasons.
it.
And we may do some things for altruistic reasons, but you cannot build a society around it.
When you're talking about win-win-win,
The academics don't advocate altruism. They advocate that if you do this, these are the results in the past when we've done that. They advocate, hey, here's the indication that if we tried this in the future, maybe we could get this result, and we could try that. It's not altruism. The argument is, it's in our bet. For example, free college education at state universities. Fine, I want to have private universities. Well, they just charge, but that is to benefit society. That is in my best interest. It's in my best interest if refugees from a war-torn country can find refuge. That's in my best interest. And partly, the argument would be because what if I was in that situation? But not just that. Also because our society is enriched accepting people that are seeking freedom. So that's how we keep our actual interest in freedom alive, as far as I'm concerned. So, and that's just one example. And all of the examples are, these are in our best interest. For example, I don't want to stop waging wars with my tax dollars all over the world out of an altruism. Because it's good for other people. Of course, it'll hurt me. No, it's better for me. I don't want to spend that money. I don't want to create the animosity. And I don't want to be responsible for innocent people dying. End of story. It's in my best interest. It's not altruism.
this is in many ways, I see what you're saying, but there are things that are negative that are associated with profit and innovation, and particularly expanding industry, right? For particularly environmental impacts. Like when you say win win win, like there's very rarely especially when you're dealing with creating and designing and building things, you've got a negative impact in some way environmentally.
Two points. First of all,
I gotta say, Joe Rogan. Now he's like a Larry King, where he's a mild interviewer, but I always thought there's a good role for people like that. That anybody, O.J. Simpson or anybody could feel like they could talk to him, and the questions are actually more probing than they seem, given people that might, not show up otherwise. He's doing a pretty good job in that kind of vein here of like challenging back, like, okay, win, win, win sounds nice, but sometimes it's win, lose, win, right? Like, environment loses. He'll probably go into this, like, communism's even worse for the environment. Sure, our rivers lit on fire, but so did the Soviets.
historically, socialism's been far worse polluter than capitalistic
How so?
countries. Well, if you just look at the environmental destruction that the Soviet Union
Yeah,
left
you just
behind,
look
it
at
was a
that and don't
complete
compare
disaster.
it.
Right, but this is socialism done wrong, John. We're going to do it right here.
Who has done it right, Joe?
No one.
No one's done it
No
right.
one. But the
And
Soviet Union is a bad.
Well, here's the thing. You got in the Netherlands and Sweden and stuff, and then now the right wingers going, that's not socialism. Okay, but every time we want the same programs they have, you call it socialism, and then you go, it'll be just like Venezuela and the Soviet Union. Now, if the program Sweden has and Denmark is not socialism, fine, then we're not asking for socialism. But they argue against those policies as if they're socialism, and it means we're going to be Venezuela. But then if you say, well, what about those ones? Oh, that's not socialist. They're just the double speak these days. It's just gotten so obvious.
Bad example.
No,
'cause
all of-
Stalin was.
Yeah, but all of Eastern Europe, there's no incentive to protect the common good in socialism. And they don't. When the government has a monopoly of all decision and power making, they don't tend to look out for the environment. That's one of the myths.
You also take away agency from people, and you take away their desire to improve and do better. And without incentive, people just don't perform the same
Cuba
way.
did okay on
But
the environment
the
as
beautiful
far as
thing
I know.
about business, let's concede a partial truth to what you said, that there will be unintended negative consequences, as you say, environmentally. Well, that's why you have to regulate business to a certain extent. That's why you have
Oh,
to
so wait, you
make
do
people
need
responsible for their-
regulation. You do need regulation, but who's going to figure out what needs to be regulated? Maybe the academics and the scientists?
environmental pollutants. And because business innovates and has an incentive to innovate, business can innovate and create solutions to those environmental problems.
Okay, let me stop you there for a second. When you say make people responsible for their environmental pollutants, then we're going to have to deal with another aspect of capitalism, and that's the effect that special interest groups and lobbyists have on politicians, because they create laws that shield these big businesses from consequences from these negative actions. So by saying that they have to clean up their problem, the only way that's ever going to happen is if they're not protected, if they don't use that influence and money.
Totally agree.
So this is where I think a lot of people have a valid argument against capitalism. That capitalism has kind of fucked over our system of government in a way, because money has gotten so deeply involved with super PACs and lobbyists, and there's so much money involved that it changes the way we govern things.
Is that a flaw of capitalism or is that a flaw of government?
I think it's a flaw of government, but that government has been influenced by capitalism, by capitalism's desire for universal growth, for constant growth.
The sad truth is that humanity is not perfectible. We can never create the perfect system. And the attempt to create the perfect
You could never have a perfect system, so therefore an imperfect system would be good, right?
system, the perfect is the enemy of the good.
Right.
Capitalism is not perfect. It does not, because
Yeah, but the improvement is not the perfect of the good. Improvement is the friend of the good. Improvement, incremental improvement, progress. Well, progress is utopian. Because no, it's not perfect. It's addressing and mitigating problems. God, this guy.
Human choices and what people want varies. People to capitalism will
People want
sell
different things. By the way, plastic is a material you can use for containers. Did you know umbrellas are useful?
cigarettes to people because that's what people want. It gives them pleasure, but it's bad for their health. But
Yeah.
they're giving people what they want.
Right.
It's the same thing.
So it's imperfect, but the world's imperfect. So you can't do anything about it because it's already happening. It's human nature. Hey, however guy got rich, it's human nature. Come on. Said the guy. Oh, and this is the Whole Foods guy. But it is interesting that you think, oh, the Whole Foods guy, he's going to be like a Ben and Jerry. Nope. Peter Thiel. There's a lot of these. Some sort of pathology to being a CEO. Not all. Hashtag not all.
In any type of externality, that's not deliberately done to harm the society. It's sort of a byproduct.
Right, but this is why win-win-win doesn't really work. It's not really win-win-win. It's win most of the time, but with some negative consequences that are better than the alternative, right?
But what you strive for is to take.
He's kind of questioning him, but then giving him the lifeline. But then this guy's like, I'm sorry, I'm too rich to notice the lifeline. I'm out of the closet. Eat the poor.
Those externalities or those negative consequences and try to, through good government, to minimize them or lessen them. I'll give you an example. So you used to live in L.A. Well, when I went to L.A. back in the early 80s, it was like going to New Delhi today. I couldn't see. My lungs hurt less than 24 hours.
Right.
But through good regulations, the air in L.A. is a fraction as polluted as it was.
Yeah, if only we could figure out the relationship between academic study and the making of those regulations. Where did they come from? Because that's the thing. If academics really hated businessmen, it wouldn't matter because academics have to have receipts. If they're going to say, hey, the pollution is killing us, and here's a way we could reduce it, they have to have the receipts. If they're going to say science works this way, they have to have the receipts. If they're going to say banking fraud costs this much, then they have to have receipts. So they might be going and getting the receipts because they hate your fucking guts, but they still need receipts. In other words, they need the facts on their side. So they can't go out and prove that cigarettes kill you just because they hate tobacco executives. They would actually have to prove that that was the fact. And when they do that with air standards, yeah, we can use them for regulations, except for assholes like this guy. Always are like, no, and you have no status. You're an academic, you big brain. We got to make money, and that means we have to have the city be like New Delhi until we finally have regulations that people like me fight, but then it succeeds, and I go, yeah, that's good, but there's just too much of this AOC stuff.
40 years ago, we have been able to clean it up. That is an example of how you can take the worst impacts of industrialization and ameliorate them or lessen them.
The Hyundai Tucson, from
What
the
the
brand with more
fuck?
2020 IIHS Top Safety Awards than Honda, Toyota.
Episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience are now.
Oh, well, I'm glad that's over. Anyway, thanks for... So you guys showed up? Go in the freaking Discord. No, you don't have to. Just kidding. Thanks for showing up and chatting. Nice seeing you, Bark Lord, and everybody else. And I will see you soon, I think.